bill only like $20.
That's an added subsistence.
It's not, nigga. You gotta pay that every
I
month.
said it's at like 65 plus the water.
I just thought I'd put something new up there that you'd never seen.
Certainly simplified.
I'm ready. I'm ready to talk.
Because innovation is my really new, so.
Yeah, that's fun.
How y'all doing? You want another one? Good over there? Need another one? Go. So I got some questions, if none of you have any questions. Okay, I have a question. So, everybody get the concept of a problem, what that means?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Anybody not? Okay, so I want to look at, eventually, I want to look at the idea of a problem from two ways. I started this yesterday talking about how problems are framed with information.
Yes.
Okay? Well, when I get around to public policy, we're going to look at not just how problems get framed with information, but how specific component parts of problems get translated into public policy. So literally I'm talking about a problem in two complementary ways here. But I just need to go back to this for half a second, this framing thing. Look, for every problem that government is involved in dealing with, there is always going to be more than one way to understand the problem. Pick a problem, any problem, and there are multiple ways of understanding the problem. Does that make sense to you? I don't care what kind of problem it is. It can be an environmental problem, it can be healthcare, it can be education, whatever the problem. There is always more than one way to see that problem. How's that working for you?
Yeah.
Okay? How's that working for you?
It works.
Okay. Well, the principal tool that gets used to help us understand a problem is information. Telepathy doesn't work. It's not some magical concoction. We use information to help us understand the given problem. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes.
All right? So, if information helps us to understand a problem. Right. And there is more than one way of understanding any given problem. Some definitions of a problem are simply going to become more dominant than other definitions. Does that make sense to you? Okay? Does that work for you?
Yes.
Does anybody have a question here? Okay, so within the information about problems,
Yeah.
in an attempt to understand those problems using the information, some information sources simply become more relevant than others. Some information becomes more relevant than others. We tend to discard some information and accept other information. Right? Does that make sense to you? Okay? However, not all information is created equally. Some information is god-awful. Does that make sense to you?
Yes. It's all about intelligence.
Okay? Yes, maybe,
Yes.
sort of, you thinking through this? Not thinking through, trying to think through? How are we doing?
Good.
So if I have multiple information sources, all of them producing information about problems, the political actors who are being affected by a given problem are not going to consider all sources of information. They're going to pick and choose a small number of sources. Some of them might be better than others, but I am not, if I am being affected by a problem, I am not going to spend 24/7 trying to sift through all information sources in order to get a better understanding of a problem. That's not happening. I am going to pick and choose. I am going to go back to information sources that I like. I'm going to discard those that I don't. And there's going to be lots of information sources out there that I don't even know about. And I probably don't even need to know about them. All right? Does that make sense to you? Okay. The same thing happens with members of the legislative branch of government, and the executive branch of government, and the judiciary. Members, political actors in government, do not consider information from all sources when they make decisions about those problems. Does that make sense to you?
Yep.
Maybe. Just like the political actors outside government, the political actors inside government do not visit all information sources. They do not. Huh? Well, try to figure it. They don't go to all information sources looking for a better understanding of a given problem. They pick and choose too.
So they consider.
What?
They would consider a source, not.
And then some of them they don't even know about. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely makes sense.
Why would you think that members of government are any different than anybody else? I mean, you shouldn't. They don't have the ability to constantly search for information. They've got to go with information sources that they trust, and that's how they do things. They discard information sources, therefore they discard information about a given problem.
So political actors inside and outside suffer from cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, they do. It's not wrong, it just is. I am not going to spend forever looking through information sources. I'm just not. Okay, well, as I discard information sources, or don't even know about some information sources, I might actually move past relevant information that I need. I just don't see it. Okay, that's cognitive dissonance. All right? And what it does, information is supposed to inform us, right? It's supposed to help us understand problems. But it might actually limit. But because there's so much information out there, good, bad, and different, you simply can't get a complete understanding of a given problem. It just doesn't work.
And that's cognitive dissonance?
Well, it's because of cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is a filter. It's a human capacity to filter out information that you don't like. Just clap your ears and go la 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 at the top of your voice because you just don't want to hear it. Okay? Does that make sense?
Perfect sense.
Well, okay. If we suffer from cognitive dissonance, they suffer from it too.
So to filter information out?
They do
by
filter
choice?
information out. They filter you filter information out all the time. It's like half of what David says just kind of goes out there and nobody hears it. So what the hell? You know what I mean? David said blah blah blah, something something something, legislative branch of government, information problem. You go, okay, whatever. I'm good. Okay, do that make sense?
Yes.
So, your textbook argues, I'm arguing communications, folks. Everybody argues that information is important. For the political process, information is important. It's necessary. Okay, well, while it's a benefit, it's also a hindrance at the same time. That's all I'm trying to get across to you in 15 minutes of, oh my God, why is he even saying this? Okay? All right, so let me go back to what I was doing, because you need this. Okay, so I have a legislative branch of government.
Yes.
It has a structure.
Yes.
I can see the structure. Okay, I've got people in this, elected officials, in the legislative branch of government. At this moment, they are responsible for two related functions: representation and legislation. That's what they do. That's why we elected them. Okay?
Okay.
And legislation is supposed to reflect a relationship between political actors outside government and the members of the legislative branch of government. Okay?
It's to
In
report.
anything they do, in terms of outputs, is supposed to reflect an attempt to deal with the problems that affect political actors outside government. Legislation, output, is simply a, you're going to love this. Don't, oh, you already knew. It's like semi-cheating. A response. It's just a response. Legislation, an output, is simply a response. What's it a response to? It's a response to an input. And what's an input? It's a demand linked to a that's affecting political actors outside government. That's all we're talking about here. This is not quantum mechanics. I can make it that way, but it's not. Okay, it's not that complicated. What is legislation?
A response.
It's a response to what?
Demands.
Or demands linked to?
Problems.
There you go. Okay? How's it working for you? See, nothing up my sleeve. Woohoo! This is great. Up until yesterday, when President Trump tweeted that transgender people should not be in the military, I did not know that the United States government between 2011 and 2015 had spent $300 million on Viagra. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Huh? I didn't know that.
Well.
I did not know that.
Did you read up on the?
They were planning on telling you.
I didn't know that.
Doesn't matter.
I didn't know that. What?
Did you read up on the Denver airport conspiracy?
No, I didn't. Did you?
I mean.
Oh, you're waiting for me to do it.
Yeah.
You're going to be sorely disappointed. I was too busy reading about the Viagra thing. Who knew? I don't know half of the things that I need to know. See, Denver Airport, didn't know that. Viagra, didn't know that. I don't know any of this stuff. I need a life. That's what I need. So, this is what I was talking about.
Outputs and inputs is related to legislation.
I agree. I don't know how I got to that.
And we still need to go over interest group liberalism.
I got that. I understand.
Still giving us a recap.
Okay, this was just a pathway to interest group liberalism. Okay, you basically get the idea here?
Yeah.
Okay, well, here's the question. The question is, if legislation is a response, to whom are they responding? That's grammatically correct. Okay. What do I mean when I say political actor? Who am I talking about?
Well, outside the
You don't have to
government.
answer the question. This is like a rhetorical deal.
Just have to say.
When I give rhetorical questions, I'll just raise my left hand and let you know. Okay? Cool?
See if that goes.
So how about you? We'll see how that works. They probably know better than any other way of doing
I
things,
just
but
expect
I'm
you
just
not to raise your
giving
hand.
it a shot. Okay, so responses,
Yeah.
to whom are they responding?
There you go.
To you.
Well, maybe not. I don't know. So I have several models designed to understand
They respond.
this relationship here.
Yeah.
Dependent upon how you look at it, this relationship changes based on the assumptions within the models. Okay, how's it working for you?
Good.
So what I've done so far is I've given you 4 models. Remember Denise Cheverly's 4 ways of looking at working relationships, right?
Avoidance.
I gave you 4 from Cheverly. I took the first one off the table, right? The whole synergy thing.
Avoidance.
Right, remember that? Okay, so I took synergy off the table. Well, I'm taking majoritarianism off the table in these four models. So I started this with majoritarianism.
Okay.
And I very quickly took that off the table because I can't find a majority.
Uh-huh.
The only majority that I can literally find is the idea that American citizens are American citizens. We live in the same country, more or less, besides for those of us who don't. But we're all still American citizens, so therefore that's the majority. Okay, that's the only way I can do, let's just count heads. Okay, what's ever in your head is an entirely different issue. The only way there's a majority is if we all count as citizens in the same country. Okay, past that, all bets are off. Because once we actually start asking people about problems, it becomes very clear very quickly that not everyone suffers from the same problems. And even if you did, you would want different responses. You would understand the problem differently because the information frames the problem differently, and you wouldn't want the same responses. Okie doke?
Okay.
And if you lived in North Dakota, well, that would be different. Okay? And I'll have to play you John Oliver's response to North Dakota. It's awesome.
Okay.
Well, of course you can.
John Oliver's great.
Allow me to come back here and present it to you.
I appreciate that.
All right. Okay, so good so far?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I'm just not willing to spend a whole lot of time and effort dealing with something I just don't think is all that relevant. Majoritarianism is just not that relevant in terms of public policy responses.
Uh-huh.
Because that's not what government does. Government does not respond to the majority. Okay, let's just take that off the table. All right, so I have three other models here. Pluralism, hyperpluralism, and interest group liberalism. Okay, so let's talk about interest group liberalism for a second. Interest group liberalism grows out of this pluralist idea. Remember pluralism?
Yeah.
Pluralism is the idea that government responds to the demands of citizens in interest groups. Okay? So pluralism gives you multiple opportunities to get what you want. One, you can go through the electoral process and vote. And two, you can join as many groups as you want. As long as you can afford the access, you can join as many groups as you want, in the hopes that government will respond to at least one of your groups. Therefore, you get at least something that you want. Okay, that's basic pluralism. How's that working for you? Okay, interest group liberalism is simply an extension of pluralism. Government exists to respond to problems. That's a liberal idea. Government exists to respond to problems.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah.
Okay. In interest group liberalism,
You said that was a liberal idea?
It is a liberal idea.
Would you say it was like the one you would define interest group liberalism with?
Well, no, I'm only defining liberal here. The principal idea of liberalism is the idea that government exists to respond to problems. That's liberalism. The question is, whose problems?
Oh, come on.
I was sorry.
Right. Okay, this is left, this is right.
I hope so.
Okay? All right? Whose problems? That's the question. Okay?
Okay.
Well, Lowy and Ginsburg and Weir and a number of other senior political scientists answer the question of whose problems in terms of the capacity of interest groups to get their voice heard. So let me go back here a second to this guy, E.E. Schatzsnyder. Anyway, back in the 1960s, Schatzsnyder literally asked the liberal question, who gets a response from government? Who does government respond to? That's Schatzsnyder's question. And Schatzsnyder's answer is it depends upon political power. Response equals political power. If you have political power, you will get a response. If you don't have political power, you will not get a response. Does that make sense? So Schatzsnyder believed that the component parts of government were what he called arenas of conflict. Okay? How's that working for you? Make sense? Okay, so in order to get a response from government, political actors outside government go to the arenas of conflict and basically fight it out. Whoever is left standing, that's who government responds to. It's like gladiators kind of thing. Okay, does that make sense to you?
It's a place where interest groups go to fight for.
It's a place where political actors go to get a response. I go to the legislative branch of government. Why? Because I want a response. All right? Okay?
Okay.
You enter the political process in order to get a response. Go to government. Schatzsnyder argues that governmental officials do not automatically respond. They respond to the most powerful voices first. It's a power game. If you've got political power, government responds to you. If you don't, government doesn't hear you. Okay? So Schatzsnyder argues that in order to get, it's like, do you know what a catch-22 is?
Something with the odds stacked against you.
Well, you can't win. There's no way to win. So in the policy process, Schatzsnyder argues that in order to win, you have to have political power going into the game. You can't just suddenly magically acquire political power. You enter with political power that gives you a better opportunity to win. If you enter the political process with no political power, it's very difficult to win. Okay? So, what's Schatzsnyder trying to tell you? It's very simple. Political power is not equitably distributed. Okay? Political power is not equitably distributed. Some political actors simply have more political power than others. Okay, what?
So how do you gain political power in the first place?
That's a really good question. So that's an excellent question. So
The
a
job
lot.
requires experience. You have to have a job to get the experience.
That's a catch-22. So the idea is that if you look at the political process, the playing field is not level. So so if you don't have political power, the deck is stacked against you. So what Schatzsnyder recognizes that within the political power, within the political process, it's possible to close off access points to those of us who don't have power. It just makes it more difficult for political actors without power to enter the process and compete. That's all I'm saying to you. So if you don't have the political power already, or if you can't find a group with political power, you're pretty much screwed. It makes your life much more difficult. The playing field is not level. That's Schatzsnyder's point. So regardless of who you are, you can enter the political process, but that doesn't guarantee you're going to get a response. Just entering the process does not guarantee a result, or the result you want. Okay? If political power was equitably distributed, this would be a fair game, and the playing field would be level. But because political power is not equitably distributed, it's not fair. Okay? So you're going to get winners and losers. The winners and losers are not necessarily based on who has the most legitimate need. It could just be based on political power. Okay? In pluralism, who wins? Active and legitimate groups. Government does not make decisions about who it responds to. Government just responds. Look, if you're a citizen, a member of an active and legitimate group, government will respond to you. That's the basic pluralist argument. Okay, it may not get to you today. You may have to wait because somebody else has a more pressing need. But eventually, government is going to get you basically what you're asking for. You may not get all of it. And in this sense, we don't have to play that game of who has more power than somebody else. We just assume that if you're a citizen, that you're all equal. And if you join a group, well, okay, now it's just a question of, is your group active, actuated, and legitimate? If it is, then, okay, we're good to go with this.
And that's pluralism.
That's pluralism. But in interest group liberalism, we're now looking at the groups, and we're actually saying, wait a second, because political power is not equitably distributed, it is very clear that some groups win and some groups don't. Okay, was that based on what? Well, okay, Schatzsnyder basically says It's based on the idea that the winners have more political power than the losers. The playing field is not level. In pluralism, the playing field is level. In interest group liberalism, it's not level. Okie doke? So interest group liberalism opens the door to groups with differing levels of power, forcing them to compete for a response. Does that make sense to you? So the end result of interest group liberalism is simply a recognition that some groups have the ability to capture the political process, control the political process. So whatever comes out of the legislative branch of government as an output, legislation, is a response to the most powerful actors who are making demands. Okay? It's not the best argument. It's not the best need. It's not the most pressing need. In interest group liberalism, governmental responses are the result of power politics. How's that working for you guys?
Makes sense.
So, if you want to look and see who wins and who loses, if you want to see why outputs happen the way they do, simply look at the groups who are making the demands. And just go, okay, fine, who has more political power? And odds are pretty damn good that whoever has more political power among the groups making the demands, that's who's going to ultimately be the winner. Okay, in interest group liberalism, the number of groups expands beyond citizen groups. Remember, in pluralism, we're only talking about citizen groups, groups of citizens.
Yes.
Remember this?
Yeah.
But in interest group liberalism, the number of groups expands. It expands by 3. There are 3 new types of interest groups that enter the political process with interest group liberalism. We now have 4 groups. Number 1 is citizen groups. And within citizen groups, not all citizen groups are created equal, because some citizens have more power than other citizens. So the groups are not going to be equal among citizens. You want to take a second?
Yeah.
Think through that. How's that working for y'all?
So citizen groups are.
Well, let's think about us. Think about citizens. Do all citizens have the same amount of political power? Well, no, they don't. Okay, so if a group of citizens with more political power comes together and forms a group, they're going to have more political power as a group than other citizens with less power. Social, economic, political standing. Okay, it just works that way. How's that working for you? So even if in interest group liberalism, even if I focus on the citizen groups are not all going to be equal to each other, because some of those groups simply have more power than others. Does that make sense to you?
So it's who makes up these groups that provides the political power?
Yes. Within citizen groups, yes. Okay, we're good with that? Okay, but within interest group liberalism, I now confront 3 other types of groups that make life complicated. First type of group that I recognize is called an advocacy group. And increasingly what we're seeing in the political process is not the rise of citizen groups. We're not seeing an expansion of the number of groups that are created by citizens. We're seeing the rise of groups created by professionals, advocacy groups. Okay?
Created by
It's not a citizen group. It's a group that citizens can join, but it's not created by citizens. Citizens did not go, oh my God, here's a problem. We need to all come together and form a group. No, a professional whose job it is to identify a problem and then go find people to join the group created the group. This is a for-profit group. This is not just a citizen group coming together to deal with a problem. This is a group constructed by professionals as a job. This is about profit. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but this generates profits.
So it's for profit, not for problem solving.
Well, it could be for problem solving, but it's not designed because citizens recognize a problem. It's designed because a staff, trained staff of professionals, goes, oh my God, here's a problem. Let's create a group. Go find members. They will pay, and we will do everything. You don't got to do anything. The professionals will do it all for you. All you got to do is be a member. You don't have to even know anybody else in the group. I don't care if you know anybody else in the group. You just got to join the group. Okay, that undermines the whole principle of citizen groups. Because with citizen groups, you're supposed to have shared interest and communicate with each other. But in an advocacy group, all you have to do is join the damn thing. You don't got to talk to anybody else. They do it for you. Now, I cut you off, sorry.
Oh, you're fine. I was just going to ask, would the NRA be like an advocacy?
Yes.
For the Second Amendment.
Yes. And generally you get wristbands. That's the best part of joining an advocacy group. You get cool stuff. Citizen groups, you just don't get a lot of cool stuff. But with advocacy groups, you get wristbands like the Live Strong Foundation. You get all sorts of cool things. You get hats and t-shirts and all sorts of really cool things. It's awesome. You get to participate in 5K runs, make yourself feel better, get a t-shirt and a hat. It's great. And then you get to go home and not have to worry about it all over again. Totally fine. I mean, you don't have to do anything. They do everything. They have offices in Washington, D.C. They have offices in Austin. They do everything with a professional staff. You don't have to do anything. You just have to join and put on a hat. It's awesome. Okay, the problem with advocacy groups in terms of democracy is that they are very much like chewing gum. Give the appearance of doing something when in effect you're not doing anything at all. Well, I belong to fill in the blank. Well, it makes yourself feel better, but okay, but you're not actually doing anything. It's the appearance of democratic participation without actually having to put in the sweat and the tears of actually leaving your couch to do anything.
Wasn't there like a big group that did that recently that those for the awareness of AIDS. Like they were putting out awareness but not doing anything to assist with the problem of it.
It's just a job.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and once you join one, they start selling their email lists. So you start winding up on everybody's email list. I get constantly bombarded with opportunities to join advocacy groups. And I get these emails and I open the email because I'm stupid. And the first thing I'm confronted with is like this picture of a baby seal. Okay, dude? And I mean, it's very difficult to resist this little white cuddly critter with those big black eyes. And oh my God, how can you say no to this? And then once you open the email and you start looking at what they're saying, the very next picture is this huge guy with a club standing on the ice with the very same little baby seal splayed out on the ice with red everywhere from blood. And you're thinking, holy hell. And then it says, for $15 a year, you can save this baby seal. It's all about you, and if you don't do this, the future of the universe is at risk here.
But
And
that
I'm
baby
thinking,
seal's
oh my
already dead.
God, I'm this horrible person because I didn't know about this poor little seal.
The seal's already dead.
Well, yeah, but it's the next one.
Oh, the next seal.
You know what I
that
mean?
they'll set a picture of.
And hey, the other ones I get are whale tails, right? For $15 a year, you can adopt a whale, and we will put a tracker on it. And for $30 a year, you can get the GPS coordinates for your whale, and you can see the damn thing whenever you want to. And if enough people get together, you can all communicate and name your whale. Yay!
Get together.
And then you can just sit down at night and check on the GPS coordinates for your whale. This is awesome. This is great. Yes? I think it's cool.
Cool.
How many whales have you sponsored?
Huh?
How many whales have you sponsored?
Enough to notice they've all been hanging in Japan.
The Japanese keep killing them all.
Yeah, those trackers have been
Which gets me to Whale Wars. Did any of you see Whale Wars on the Discovery Channel?
Yes.
Awesome.
Oh my God, it was the most awesome television program on the face of the earth.
Awesome.
Whale Wars? You didn't see Whale Wars? It's,
I just
oh my God. The Sea Shepherd, right? Out there protecting the interests of the whales, right?
The interest.
Absolutely. It's awesome. And you can follow the exploits of the Sea Shepherd and its crew, right? And you can go to
Watch
their
them.
online warehouse and buy shirts and t-shirts and hoodies and decals to support the good work of the Sea Shepherd and its crew. It makes you feel like you're out there in the South Pacific fighting for the... This is great. I get to sit there and I get to watch the crew of the Sea Shepherd in my Sea Shepherd t-shirt. I am one with them.
Yep.
This is
You get
great.
to watch them yell at boats saying, "Stop doing that."
It's great. It's awesome. The point to advocacy groups and the increased dependency on them is that it separates us from the political process. We become spectators, assuming that advocacy groups will simply do it all for us. Because I ain't doing anything unless I get a damn wristband and a t-shirt. Screw that.
Don't be the ball cat.
Go. I'm not doing this stuff because I'm a citizen of the United States of America and I want to participate in the political process because I'm a citizen of the United States of America and I recognize that political participation is my birthright. Screw that. I want a t-shirt and a wristband.
advocacy groups are the equivalent of spectators?
Advocacy groups are not the equivalent of spectators. They are the participants. The members are the spectators. We are all trained to sit back and watch as our trained advocates fight it out on our behalf. Which literally separates us from the political process. We're increasingly separated from the political process. We're distanced from the process. We watch as senators battle it out on the floor of the Senate over a health care bill, and we are separated from that without any real understanding of what it is they're debating or why they're debating it or whose it's going to benefit. We have no idea, but we know that there is an advocacy group standing there ready to fight for us. But we have absolutely zero clue about what they're debating. Okay, healthcare bill, great, but I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know who it benefits. I don't know why it benefits. I have no idea about any of this damn stuff because we become spectators. And we have become spectators. It's just become separated from the reality that we live in. I don't know what they're doing. What the hell? I have no idea. But it makes for good television. Okay. Okay, so there's two. Here's three. Corporate groups. Corporations. All right? Look, the Supreme Court has consistently argued, and I don't see some magic transformation here. The courts have argued pretty consistently that corporations have the same political power as citizens. So in terms of political participation, the courts have ruled that corporate entities have political power, basically equal to yours. So in a sense, corporations are citizens as well. Okay? So I don't expect any of you to remember this, but in the 2012 election, there was this exchange between Mitt Romney and a group of protesters at one of his rallies. And the protesters were arguing that he had sold out corporate entities, and he was simply the face of corporate America, and he had sold out to the corporate power structure as opposed to us, the citizens. And Romney looked at these people, and with a very straight face, he said, well, corporations are people too. And everybody went, oh, no, they're not. But legally, they are. So, in a very real sense, Romney was not saying something antithetical to the Constitution and to American values. He's not going to burn in hell for this. No, he's not. So, when we look at who has political power, the courts are very clear about this. Corporate entities, because they're made up of human beings and they're not transformer-like robots, have political power. They can contribute to campaigns. They have political free speech rights. They are treated as citizens. Okie doke? Remember E. Schatzsnyder? Some citizens have more political power than others. The playing field is not level. Okay, now if we add corporations into the mix with the same political rights as citizens, now who has more power? A corporate entity or an individual citizen? The corporation. Even when you move into the beginning of the race, the corporation is out in front. Now let's take corporations and put them in groups. Interest groups, corporate interest groups, special interest groups. Now who has more power? A corporate group or Mothers Against Drunk Driving?
Corporate.
The corporate group. Does that make sense to you? So no matter how I do this, when I include corporations into the mix, I tilt the balance of power. The pharmaceutical industry, or your capacity to enter the process, demand safe drugs. Have you ever looked at drug marketing campaigns on television? Have you ever looked at the side effects?
Mm-hmm.
Holy crap! I mean, the side effects are worse than the damn thing that you're taking the drug for. The side effects include death. Okay, that's not good. I mean, I'm not on board with death. And the older I get, the less on board I am. But I ain't taking a drug that's going to end in, instead of what it's, oh, that ain't happening. So you look at the side effects and you're going, yeah, what's up with that? But, okie doke. So my point is, here's my question. It's not so much it's one of these kind of questions. Okay, who creates legislation designed to regulate the pharmaceutical industry? Who creates legislation designed to regulate the pharmaceutical industry?
The legislative branch.
The legislative branch. Okie doke. All right. So, who actually regulates the pharmaceutical industry? The FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. We'll get to that because that's part of the bureaucracy. What?
And was that made because of the legislation branch?
What do you mean?
Like legislation branch put in place the FDA?
No. The Food and Drug Administration was a creation, and I don't know how long ago it was, but the Food and Drug Administration was an idea. The Congress had to create the legislation you actually created, right? But, oh, I see what you're saying. So in that sense, yes. The answer is yes. The legislative branch of government created the Food and Drug Administration. Yes, I see that. I got you now. The Environmental Protection Agency is another example of what I'm talking about here. The Environmental Protection Agency was a creation of Congress based on a suggestion by Richard Nixon, a Republican president. So Nixon came up with this idea for the Environmental Protection Agency. The legislative branch of government created a piece of legislation called the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA. Within NEPA is the EPA, so let's blame the EPA on Republicans because that's who created it. But yes, the answer is you've got a piece of legislation in recognition that there's a problem with food and drug safety. So Congress creates the Food and Drug Administration to regulate pharmaceutical industries. Yes, I see what you're saying. Okay. So anyway, I got Congress, I got an agency of the government, I got Congress creating legislation, I got the Food and Drug Administration regulating pharmaceuticals. Okay. Now the question is, who do they respond to? Do they respond to you, citizens and groups, or the pharmaceutical industry? And here's my example for you. The Food and Drug Administration is funded by Congress. The Food and Drug Administration is chronically underfunded. There are not enough people in the Food and Drug Administration to test the drugs that you take that the government says are safe. Who tests the drugs? That's not a rhetorical question. Who do you think tests the drugs?
The drug companies.
The drug manufacturers. And use you as a test case. All right? Literally, that's how this works. Okay, dude? Now, who does that benefit? It damn sure don't benefit you. It benefits the food and drug, the pharmaceutical industry. Because the pharmaceutical industry basically says, oh, I'm sorry you don't have enough people to test our drugs. Hey, let us do it for you. And the Food and Drug Administration, because there's no money there to actually do this, and there's not enough people to actually test the drugs, go, well, okay, sounds good to me. So the testing gets done in-house by their chemist, and the results get sent to the FDA, and the FDA basically accepts them. Congress, who's supposed to be providing the money for the FDA, decides not to. And why don't they give the money to the FDA? Because the pharmaceutical industry says, hey, tell you what, leave us alone. And if you leave me alone, I will give you a boatload of money so that you can put that money into your re-election campaign. Okay, Doug? Look, if you look at this, and John McCain is a good example of this. So John McCain comes back to the Senate after being diagnosed with brain cancer. And he comes into the Senate and he casts a vote on health care, which is pretty damn courageous in the sense of his own health. So he comes in, casts his vote to open debate on repeal and replace of the Affordable Care Affordability Act. Okay, the cynical side to this, the interest group liberal side to this, says, why? Why did you do this? Why did you vote to open debate for the repeal of the Affordable Care Act with the potential of putting 32 million people out of health care? Why did you do this? And the answer is, the cynical interest group liberal argument is, look at how much money over the years John McCain has gotten from the pharmaceutical industry. It is in the tens of millions of dollars. Okay, the interest group liberal argument is simply, this is just payback for the money that you put into my campaigns. That's all this is. Okay, that's extraordinarily cynical, but that's interest group liberalism. That's the interest group liberal argument. Okay, Dave? Look at who has the capacity, power to influence the process, and not just influence the process, but, and I erased it, but capture the process, control the process. That's interest group liberalism. So what I do is I go from pluralism, where we are in control, to interest group liberalism, where we are not in control, and the corporate interests and the advocacy groups and the third type of group that I want to talk about here in a second, they're in control. Okay, Doug? Look, when I was young, and this is like the advent of really before color television. So I remember a time when pesticide advertisements were just a regular part of television. And you would get this guy in a lab coat. This is not very interesting advertisement. But you get this guy in a lab coat, and then he's standing there with this tomato. And they go, see this tomato? This is a perfect tomato. This tomato is brought to you by pesticides. Pesticides are good for you. You don't have to wash this tomato. because pesticides will not harm you. Pesticides are good for you. Oh, okay. Great. That's awesome.
Okay.
As a mosquito spraying, you probably never really experienced this, but when I was a kid, there was just, nobody thought about mosquito spraying with pesticides. So they had these trucks in almost every town with sprayers on the back, big tanker trucks. And they would go down the streets spraying this mist of pesticides everywhere. Kids were out there playing in it. Like, wow, this is great, find me in the mist. Okay, and nobody thought through any of the consequences of pesticides, because the pesticide industry basically said, pesticides are not bad, they're good. Even though the pesticide industry knew the potential for cancer-causing ingredients within the pesticide, they knew all of this.
The carcinogenic material.
It just never went anywhere. In the 1950s, after World War II, the nuclear power was in this kind of a position where nobody knew exactly what to do with it. And there was this fledgling nuclear power industry that literally corporate America wanted to use nukes, but they couldn't figure out how to do it without basically killing everybody. So they had this ad campaign, and they went to government, and they basically tried to sell government on the idea of peaceful uses for nuclear power. Okay, so the first attempt at peaceful uses for nuclear power was, let's just blow shit up. So this will be cool. So they figured, well, look at how long it took to build the Panama Canal. Wouldn't it be just cool if we just set off nuclear explosions?
Oh, God.
That would work. And look at how difficult it is in some places to have harbors, safe, deep harbors. I mean, why don't you just put a nuclear weapon out there and blow it up? Instant harbor. Hey, no problem. So literally, an agency of the government was created by the legislative branch of government to oversee nuclear power and peaceful uses for nuclear power. So they went into the desert of Nevada and started just exploding nuclear weapons. And that got boring. So then they decided, well, let's have a project. So they went to Alaska. And on the Alaskan coast, they started to explode nuclear weapons to build deep sea harbors. Because what did they have just discovered in Alaska? It's a three-letter word. It begins with an O and it ends with an L. Oil. So how do you get cheaply the oil from the oil fields out of Alaska?
You blow it out.
You build harbors, big ships come in. It's awesome. You don't have to do all that pipeline stuff. Just pump it across Alaska, and right there you got a deep sea harbor.
Wait, wouldn't that contaminate the oil?
What do you care?
Oh,
I mean, what do they care? I mean, that's kind of the least of my worries. And the only positive out of this is that there just weren't a whole lot of people in Alaska to kill. So literally, this is what they went through. And then they decided that Americans will not accept nuclear explosions just randomly happening, and that's not probably a good thing. So then they transitioned to nuclear power plants. This is awesome. So America will have all the power it needs for every purpose. We won't have to use coal. We won't have to use anything else. We're going to rely on nuclear power. It's going to be the future of America. Okay, but then guess what nobody thought through? Well, okay, that's down the road. But the thing that nobody thought through, one was safety.
Disposal?
what does nuclear power plants create?
Radiation.
Energy, and radiation in what form?
UV waste.
Nuclear waste. Okay, nobody thought through nuclear waste. Let me repeat myself. Nobody here, or any damn place else in government that I can find, thought through the idea of nuclear waste. Which seemed to be a fairly relevant topic to think about, but nobody thought through nuclear waste. Ladies and gentlemen, what are you going to do with increasing tonnage of nuclear waste that has a half-life of 50,000 years?
Just
I don't know. And they still haven't figured it out.
Did they just have a collapse in that place they're building over there?
Yeah, well, that was over on the Texas-New Mexico border. They were trying to put it into caverns over near Carlsbad, and that collapsed on them. So that didn't work well. I mean, they've got a site in Nevada that they've been fighting over for the last 20 years. Ladies and gentlemen, from the early 1950s until 2017, there is no agreed upon place to put the accumulated nuclear waste that has been created in the United States of America. Does that make any sense to any of you? Don't make a damn bit of sense to me. Okay, where in pluralism does that fit in? Nowhere that I can think of. It only fits into interest group liberalism because it benefits the nuclear power industry. That's the interest group liberalism argument. Okay, does that make sense to you? So, if I put into the process corporate groups, now I've got another player in there. I've got a big-time player in here. I got the rest of us, and I got corporate entities. And I have now put a huge political set of actors into the process, mixing them in with the rest of us. Okay, and here's the last type of group. It's called an AstroTurf group. Do I need to explain AstroTurf?
Sure.
Do you guys understand what a grassroots group is?
No.
Okay, where is the power of a plant? Where is the source of its energy? In its roots. Cut off the roots, plants dies. Okay. Well, a grassroots group refers to a citizens group created on the local level. We did it. Here in Tomball, Texas, we saw a problem. We joined together. Right? And we dealt with the problem here on the local level. And then we connected to other groups around America. But it's local group to local group to local group. Grassroots. And we're stronger because our roots are embedded in the local communities that we live in. Right? And we just connect local community to local community to local community, citizen to citizen to citizen, group to group to group, all joined together, right, at the grassroots level. Citizens doing it. Okay? There's power in numbers at the local level, grassroots. Okay? All right?
So, AstroTurfs are the same as grassroots?
They're not.
Oh, no.
They're not. Did you get right now, do you get grassroots?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what's the difference between AstroTurf and real grass? And I just answered the question. It's artificial, it's fake. But it looks good, right? Right? I mean, in the middle of January in Wisconsin, AstroTurf looks damn good because real grass is like frozen in food. Okay? Right? All right. So, what's the difference between a grassroots group and an AstroTurf group? One's made up of real citizens dealing with real local problems, and the other is artificial. Okay? Hold on. Just hold on a second. How about this for a group? This sounds good. You're not going to be able to turn this down. Americans for Prosperity. I give you all the opportunity to join a group called Americans for Prosperity.
Vague.
Ignore the baby.
Sermonic, got it.
Okay. Who's not in favor of Americans for Prosperity?
I mean,
Prosperity sucks. We're going to say that. I mean, if you get an email that says you have the opportunity as an American citizen to join Americans for Prosperity, it's a one-time offer, and this is the opportunity to get on board the good ship America, ladies and gentlemen, because we are all in this together. And prosperity for one is prosperity for all. God love America. And we will give you a t-shirt that says Americans for Prosperity, and it will have an American flag on it. Right? And a wristband, red, white, and blue. And a hat that says Americans for Prosperity, AFP, right up there. Right? And a decal. And a magnet for your refrigerator.
Okay, now I'm sold.
It'll be awesome. I knew if I just keep adding to it, eventually I would get to the thing that you needed the most in life. Right?
genial shit, yeah.
Whatever. Okay. And you all look at this and you go, damn, this is awesome. And they say, don't join right this second. Go to the website. Check out our website. Look at the very important people that we have who have already joined. Look at what we're up to. Check out our website. And you do. And you go, damn, this is great. Flags waving all over the place. Famous people. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And you go, I want to be one of them. I want that hat. I want to make America great again. So I could join this group. This would be great. But in the very fine print, embedded on the last page, is a link to the board of directors of the group. And guess what? The board of directors for Americans for Prosperity are all CEOs of corporate America.
Oh, good. I think we're dogs.
And you get the opportunity to join the group. But the ultimate message of Americans for Prosperity is you have just joined a group, and the principal benefits of the group are going to go to corporate America and not to you. You've just basically given corporate America $35 to join a group that benefits corporate America. Okay, my point is increasingly AstroTurf groups are entering the political process, and you don't have the ability to distinguish. It takes energy to distinguish between a grassroots group and an artificial AstroTurf groups. You have to do some looking. Well, guess what? Americans don't do the looking. It looks good, therefore it must be good. I went to Wikipedia. They talked about it on Wikipedia. I saw an infomercial about this. It sounded great. It had a really cool person on there that I recognize and really admire. Therefore, I believe in this.
So it's not made by the general people, it's made by the higher up
It's
corporation.
corporate.
Isn't this exactly like advocacy groups?
Only on the opposite extreme. It's an extreme form of an advocacy group. An advocacy group targets a problem. An astroturf group targets a beneficiary that's not you. You join, an advocacy group is one that you join because you have been made to believe that the problem is real. When you join a grassroots group, you don't know who you're benefiting. And in a very real sense, most Americans are not going to take the time to actually explore the group. We're just not that interested. And as advocacy groups rise, as the number of advocacy groups rise, we become more accustomed to being spectators and not participants. And in the state of Texas, that really is the truth. But as you look at the disproportion, that's not a word. So it should be a word, but it's not a word. If you look at the unequal representation between spectators and participants, it's pretty damn clear that the number of spectators are growing and their curiosity is diminishing. Americans' curiosity is simply diminishing. Okay? Well, not yours. That should make you feel better. Right? I don't want to tamp down your enthusiasm, and I don't want to take away your smile and face.
So we're done with interested legislative groups?
Okay. So, with each new group that I add into the mix, the point is that I redefine political actor. And ultimately, when I get to interest group liberalism, political actor means basically you and I have disappeared completely. We're just not there anymore. I have so diluted the political power, that's diluted, not deluded. Actually, it's one and the same thing, though. Damn, I wish I'd never said that. By the end of the day, I have diluted the ability of citizens to actively engage in the political process. Does that make sense to you?
So a citizen group does not fall in interest group liberalism?
No.
Okay.
Look, even if you want to participate in the political process, okay, as an American, you feel some obligation to participate in the political process, and four-letter word begins with a B and ends with an E. Yeah, but okay, that thing that Americans don't really understand that well. Vote. Okay, so I'm going to vote,
Okay.
and I enter the political process to go vote. And I look at the candidates, and I go, wait a minute, where do these people come from? And you go, oh look, a Republican and a Democrat. Now, did I have any input in choosing those people? Well, no, not really. They came from the elite of the party. I didn't choose them. They were chosen for me. And then I sat down through the entertainment of the Republican campaign process and watched all of those debates. And damn, they were entertaining. And that was awesome. But I came away not really knowing anything about anybody, but somebody has small hands. That's all I know. I don't get it, right? I don't have any clue. But eventually, out of all of this entertainment, comes the Republican candidate for the presidency of the United States of America. And out of the Democratic Party, same thing. And then they square off on Saturday Night Live to debate. Okay, and at the end of that, I still don't know what to do, but I do my civic duty and I go vote. Alec Baldwin? Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, and then once it's all over, then we all go, I have no idea what we just did, but that was awesome. Okay? The point is, the further we move away from pluralism, the further we move away from relevant citizen participation in the process. In pluralism, you have a whole world of relevant means to politically participate. But in interest group liberalism, you basically have none. Because any political power that you actually have is just an illusion. You don't get to choose the candidates. And let's be clear about this. If you go to a polling place and actually vote, and you look at the candidates that you're voting for, how many people actually walk into the voting booth, and vote for candidates they have no idea who in the hell they're voting for? What the hell is this person? I have no idea. Let's just choose. Okay. And how many people will actually go in and vote and just leave a space blank because you have no idea who any of these people are? And most people will not do that. They vote. Okay, well, I voted for somebody against somebody else. I didn't know this person. I didn't know this person. I had no clue about what I'm doing, but I voted anyway. How relevant is that? Okay, that doesn't make any sense to me. And that's embedded in this interest group liberalism thing. Pluralism, ladies and gentlemen, pluralism has high demands. I mean, the demands on you and me, these are off the chart demands. I mean, in pluralism, information has to be relevant, relatable to problems. You have to be political enough to recognize that in order to understand those problems, you have to spend time acquiring knowledge. Okay, Doug?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, but the new season of Game of Thrones is on. I don't have time for this. Oh wait, The Walking Dead is coming up. I don't have time for this. I haven't even gotten through all 3 of The Walking Dead yet. Wait a second, I don't have time for this information stuff. Wait a damn second. Whoa! And I've just taped about a week of the Tour de France that I haven't even looked at yet. And even though I know who won, I still have all of this stuff to look at. I don't got time for this. I got other stuff to do. And it's way more important. And let's be clear, I haven't gotten a wristband yet. I have lots of these at home. I should just start mixing and matching. Okay. We could swap. We could have like an extra credit student participation swap meet. Okay. And we could all put them out there and we can exchange. How about that? This is awesome. Look at what we're up to. Okay, so let's talk about your essay. Because really and truly, you actually want to talk about your essay because that's what's most gripping and important in your life right at the moment. I understand that.
Okay.
Or would you rather talk about horror fiction and horror vampires and gothic fiction?
Or
Vampires.
stick to essays.
No, we can stick to the essay.
Incorporate that into our essay.
If you
I mean,
want.
if we can write a short horror story instead of this essay, then I
Oh
mean,
my God.
that would be.
I get to do that in the fall. One of my American government classes is gonna deal into the idea of fear.
Okay.
So anyway, let's talk about your essay. Yay. What fun.
I'll get your other one back to you Monday.
Okay, so your essay looks at the relationship between political actors outside government and the political actors in the legislative branch of government. Okay? Let me be very clear about this. When you get into the body of your essay, you should spend time linked to the textbook describing the structure of the legislative branch of government.
The House and the Senate.
Okay?
But
Yes.
you still-
Yes. Describe it. Look,
So
what
you
did we start off with in here about 8 years ago, back when we liked each other?
What?
What did we start with? What's the first thing we started with?
The
System process, linked to the Constitution,
So
right?
it's best to reference chapter 2 mostly?
No, you don't have to reference it, you just have to recognize that your essay is a look at the legislative branch of government linked to political actors outside of government, and if you're going to do that, start it the same way you did your first essay. System, process, Constitution. Well, there's no reason to make this more complicated. Look, if you're going to talk about the legislative branch of government, you have to show the legislative branch of government the system of it. Once you've got the system, then you can start talking about the process. What I've been talking about is the process. Pluralism is the process. Interest group liberalism is the process. It ain't the thing. Okay, doke? Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
I mean, why make it more difficult? It's not complicated to begin with. Why just automatically make life more complicated? Here I am trying to make your life less complicated. You're trying to make your life more complicated. Let's meet in the middle.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Awesome. So, once you got done with the introduction, just start with the legislative branch of government and describe the damn thing.
House
Okay,
and
doke?
what they do.
It's bigger than this, smaller than that, looks like this, not that. Right?
Okay.
It's purple, not pink. Do that.
And start describing pluralism and IGL.
Hold on, what does it say? Begin with your textbook and then describe different ways of linking political actors outside government and legislators. Ladies and gentlemen, let me be clear about this. You have 5 different ways of doing this. 4 of them I have given you. But your textbook talks about this too. Doesn't your textbook talk about the creation of legislation? Doesn't your textbook talk about the process? Yes, it does. You've read it twice. You're all looking at me like, really? Okay, your textbook walks you through a method of analyzing the relationship between the legislative branch of government and political actors. Doesn't your textbook talk about the role of elections? Doesn't your textbook talk about organized groups? Doesn't your textbook talk about representation? Doesn't your textbook talk about legislation? Doesn't your textbook talk about the relationship between the legislative branch of government and America? Just say yes.
Yes.
No, say yes. Well done. Okay? Well, why can't you just go to the book and pick out from the book the way the author of your textbook talked through the link between political actors here, political actors there?
And so, just pick the resources and then.
And then pick resources.
Oh, no, 3 pages minimum for that. Just, yeah, so pick resources.
Look, you have one chapter on the legislative branch of government. You have one chapter on elections. You've got one chapter on interest groups. I mean, how hard is it to find 3 pages out of that? Okay, that's like 3 chapters, which you've already read. Okay, now this is the kind of stuff that gets me every single time, that gets me to join stuff. An LED keychain from the Lone Star College Extended Learning Center. I am on board. Whatever these people want, I will give them. Not only do I love Lone Star College Tomball, but stuff like this is awesome. This is great. And it's made in China to boot. I mean, how could you get that? The only way it'd be better is made in Taiwan. By a corporate interest in Taiwan who's going to get, what, $3 billion in tax incentives to move a plant that it may or may not build in Wisconsin? This is awesome. Okay, that's like international interest group liberalism.
Yep.
And we're going to put it in the Speaker of the House of Representatives' home district. This will be great, having no conflict of interest there. That's awesome. So, what are you talking about, David? Here's an essay here, bud. So, I got an essay.